Oh wow, I look terrible.
Well stamped it. All right. Oh, get money. 20, 40, 60, 80.
Hi, Kate.
1,
How are you?
Yes, afternoon. Good. How's it going?
60, 80,
I think my volume is all the way down.
20, 30, 40, 50. Okay.
Hello.
Are you talking to the computer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. Hi.
Okie dokie. Let's just wait for everyone else to roll in.
How's the weather there, guys?
Are you? It's freezing, but are you in LA?
No, Palm Springs.
Okay.
Yeah, LA is a disaster zone right now. It's terrifying. We have a bunch of friends that live on the west side too.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Mm.
I've been running around the last day, but I'm just catching glimpses of it, and it seems
Yeah,
like it's
like people abandoning their cars on the side of the or in the middle of the road to run to the beach yesterday.
Wow,
Crazy.
it's awful.
No, we just have extreme heat in the summer here, but not a lot of fires. A little bit of fires, but not like a lot of Southern California and Northern.
Yeah, I always think of it northern, not as much southern, but I guess not anymore.
Hello, Al.
Hey, Al. Oh, you're muted.
Unmute. Okay. No, I'm not. No longer muted. All right. Good afternoon, Kate.
Hello, how's it going?
Not too bad. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started so that drag this on any longer than we have to. We'll start with the comments on the DGEIS. Hey, Lauren.
Hey, Lauren.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
All right. So did everybody get a chance to at least look at it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I guess Abby, any word from the village? I know that the mayor wanted to collect comments at some point to combine them with other comments from the village. You know when that is, when she needs that by.
I do not, but I do know that at least the planning board has assembled some form of timeline. If it would be helpful, I would suggest following that timeline. So,
Okay.
right, are you open to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the planning board, they had their DGIS workshop, not yesterday, but Monday evening. They're going to have another workshop at the end of this month, and then they're going to have a public DGIS meeting at the beginning of February. I think that's going to be a public hearing, and then they're going to have a following workshop to review any comments from the public hearing or concerns from the public in February as well. So they're going to have a total of 4 extra meetings, 2 in January, and then it looks like 2 in February. I'm not sure if the HDRB needs to follow that exact format, but I think it would be helpful to have at least this being the first extra session and maybe another one in February if possible.
All right. Let me ask, do we feel that we need to have a public hearing to discuss our comments on the DGIS? I'm not sure I understand the logic of having a public meeting or a public hearing about our comments.
I do not think it's necessary. I appreciate being included and being kind of asked to submit comments, but our scope of what we're looking at in the village is so specific and small and not even village wide. It's historic district, and I honestly don't even really see, other than all of our personal feelings, which I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I don't really even quite understand, unless she's asked, like, are we submitting comments as presumably as our role as the historic district review board, right? Like, not like, oh, you are 4 community members, what are your opinions? So other than signage, like, I don't really see how it's relevant to us at all. So I certainly do not think we need to have multiple meetings. Planning board is a little different. Their scope obviously is much wider, and they are looking at the entire village and how it affects the village, I would imagine, more. So that's my feeling.
I wonder if it's like depending on the layers of formality. I mean, if our comments go to the mayor and other working groups comments go to the mayor, depending on what they are, if that will then require sort of an additional meeting or formalizing some ideas. I think in the DGIS, they were specifically calling out the HDRB and suggesting that we have sort of workshops with the Fjord Trail team, depending on what our concerns are. And so I wonder sort of what that interface is, and if it's signage or a bit beyond that, and what's technically, to your point, Todd, in our scope versus not in our scope. You know, what we might think of just in considerations of a historic village versus technically what we can comment on.
Well, I guess from what I recall, the only thing that we were asked to do is to prepare any comments we may have and send them to the mayor so that she can combine them and then submit them to the I forget who the agency is that collects the comments concerning the DGIS.
State parks, I believe.
Okay. So I don't know if really there is any need for us as a board to go beyond that. I mean, obviously, if as an individual, if you do in fact have additional comments that as a citizen of the village of Cold Spring you would like to express, there's really no reason why you can't do that individually. And there is a process to handle those comments. So I think that let's keep our commentary as the review board limited to what we see as a board and the impact of the project on our district. Okay. does anybody have a cop, or can they put up the map of the trail? Does anybody have that?
I had it open a little while ago, but well, I've got the whole document open, which is 700 pages.
No.
Well, is there any part of the trail? I mean, sorry, is there any part of the trail that is in the Cold Spring Historic District?
No.
Yes.
Where?
Yes, there is.
Well, yes
Yeah.
and
Where?
no, depending on what map you look at.
That's right, and that's why I wanted to look at the map, because
Well, Fair Street is just sidewalks.
I
Fair Street
know.
is considered a meander, which on the rest of the trail is considered part of the holistic design. And it's maybe in the way that they phrased it, my read is that it's maybe a meander. And so there's less design that's gone into it. On some maps, you'll see the meander trail ends at the public parking lot next to Mayor's Park. And in other designs, you'll see it go to the end of Fair and then down Main.
Yeah, I think that's a bit confusing, but everything that I read in multiple sections of the document, calling it a meander, I think is more of a, as I understood it, is really more of a way to disperse people, humans. Nothing on Fair Street is happening in the plan until the sidewalk ends, at which point they would construct a sidewalk in coordination with the village to the end of where it connects to, 9D. That's how I understood it. I mean, they're not proposing.
You talking about at Stony Point?
I'm talking about what would potentially fall within the historic district, which is the section on Fair Street, which is most of it is existing sidewalk, and they're not suggesting any change to that sidewalk. It's an addition of sidewalk where there is currently none.
Okay. Well, I think that's why we need to. Do you have it open?
Yeah, let me see if I can grab it, Todd, unless you have it.
Yeah. They've got a good search feature for the document, but map is not. There's a lot of maps.
Okay.
It might be in the
Right,
summary, the summary in the beginning, actually.
Abby, can you I'm trying to share, and it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
I mean, I have a map up, but it's going to be not the
Can you
easiest.
just tell us what page it's on in the document?
Well, it's
go
on
through
the
it
cover.
ourselves.
I'm looking at the cover,
I know.
and at one end of it there is
Let me just leaf through the beginning of it and see if there's a more of a holistic. Well, we really just want to look at the southern section.
right.
Here we go. I got it.
You got it.
What page?
Page 3233. So yeah, it's the section that's, they're terming a meander, which my understanding
Okay.
is sidewalk.
32 to 33. All right.
Yeah.
Is that what is it in the
right page?
Appendices?
So
Is it in the appendices?
I just leafed through on the on the Fjord Trail website. I'm just leafing through to page 3233.
All right. Can you share that with us on the so that
I can. If
It works.
I have
Okay.
a error exclamation point.
Abby, can you unlock it?
It says multiple participants can share, all participants. I'm not quite sure how to.
I might have to quit and reopen. It's saying.
Okay.
Let me try. I'll be right back.
They also referred to it as a roundabout, right? At Fair Street.
That's fair. In 90, they're proposing potentially a roundabout close to Little Stony Point. That's one of the 3 areas where they foresee additional congestion.
Yeah, I mean, also that's outside of our district.
Yeah. The other point, though, they've identified those 3 locations, right? There's that one. And then the second is at the intersection of Main and 90 at the gas station and church. And then the third is at the end of Fair Street on Main. And that's the one spot I didn't see that they had a solution other than on Saturdays making the street one way.
You guys see my screen or no?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. There we go. Oops. So here we are, the southern portion.
Okay. And I guess what I don't see there is the connection to the train station. Aren't we talking about the people coming off of the train at the station, which is further down?
That's
Yeah, that's not included in any of this.
It's just assumed that people will walk there, but it's not actually officially part of the trail.
Yeah.
There's no construction or anything associated with that.
So that to me, and I don't know, Al, if you have thoughts there, but it's the same thing with how some of these diagrams have the meander ending at the lot on Fair Street. If we, so much work has gone into the design of all of these different areas. And when you're reading about, which rattlesnake is where and how they're being very careful to avoid, the peregrine falcon area, all this, it's all been sorted. But then when you get to the town, the village, it feels less clear to me what's getting shifted and moved where to accommodate who. And so in this case, we have the end of the Fjord Trail. And if you picture the Fjord Trail as a river, it's like the mouth of the river and like everything's going somewhere. And don't we need to design through where everyone goes, right?
Well,
Well,
I think they're proposing, this is not being called the beginning or the end of anything. Their whole pitch is that there will be many points along the trail that have entry points.
It's true.
And I mean, as far as the design of what would be added to actual village property, which is proposed, right? I mean, what they're calling a meander is proposed at this point. It hasn't entered into the design phase, I suppose. I didn't read anything anywhere, and it's obviously in 700 pages possible that I missed something, but I didn't read anything anywhere that was proposing construction in village limits other than adding sidewalk where there is none on Fair Street. Like I didn't even see anything that was saying like widening the current sidewalk. I know when I came back in, I heard you mention the option of making it one way or something on certain peak hours, like that type of thing. But as far as construction in the village, did you see anything else like other than adding the missing sidewalk?
Lauren, sorry, were you going to say something?
I think there's a better map to look at on pages 92 to 93 where they show they're calling them alignments. And it's showing the various ways that people can get to the trail, both from the train station along that. There's a lot of more information there. Yeah, that one.
Okay.
So these alignments, as I understood them from the meeting they had,
these were other options.
These are options for where the physical trail would go, the larger trail.
Oh, not just movement, you mean?
The white is how they have it currently designed. I'm not sure the distinction between alignment 1, blue and white, but the others are basically saying, okay, look, if you don't want the trail to run along the train tracks, it could go down Fair Street, it could go down Main Street, and they've ranked.
The blue, I think, was on the other side of the tracks, but also
Oh, yeah.
in the tracks pretty much the whole time.
So they've ranked
Mhm.
these, and the Fjord Trail, as I understand it, the team feels that this white sort of master plan trail is their preferred path. They've looked at all the different options, how traffic gets interrupted, how the water gets interrupted, etc. And this is what they prefer, as I understand it. I think, they're depending on who you speak to, there's other people who feel differently. But from what I read in this DGEIS report, the white trail is the one we're studying, with a meander being basically the yellow trail.
Yeah.
Which is alignment number 4.
I think a big, as I understand from reading this and also various meetings in the last several years, they didn't do the best job explaining this, because and how things were weighted, because I think a really big component of this is ADA accessibility, and none of these other than the blue one that's also basically just along the tracks, which is essentially flat the whole way, like none of these other options are going to be able to be ADA accessible. You can't widen sidewalks on Main Street in Cold Spring. You're not going to be able to without like major interruption, and who knows, probably never going to happen. So they were like the way that they ranked them, it kind of was like obvious, like of course you can't make the pitch of Main Street less, so it's not going to get the same number of points as the flat trail. So I think that was a big part of it. It was really just being ADA accessible, which is a big
Well,
good feature.
okay. Now, my first question is that anybody getting off the train at at the Cold Spring station, how do they get to how, if somebody is in a wheelchair, how do they get to any of these other alignments, including the main street? The road coming up from the station to the bridge that goes over the tracks does not comply with any ADA grading.
They could conceivably take the elevator over the tracks.
Yeah.
And then go down the ramp at the train station and go down Market Street and be on the sidewalks to Dockside. And then they'd be on the accessible trail.
But how do you get up the hill? I mean, I live right there, and I know that the road going from the train station up to the bridge where it crosses over the railroad tracks doesn't comply with any ADA requirements.
So, I mean,
yeah.
I just, Todd, you pointed out that their proposal is a nodal proposal, that there are multiple entry points. I agree with that logic, but I think this is a linear park with the southern terminus in Cold Spring. And I think you can read into that in some of their language, that they're acknowledging this is a southern terminus. It's unclear to me the visitorship and where the majority of visitors are coming from. My gut is south from the city. They're coming up. I could be totally wrong on that, but I think Al has a great point. Like, you have to get to the beginning of this trail, and that means going through the village. And so I would like to see the design of how a car, a pedestrian in a wheelchair gets to the park. I would love this park to happen. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that there's so many sensitivities around working in Cold Spring for this, that they almost haven't designed through what it means to be in the village. But I would guess that there is a lot more garbage cans. There's a lot more signage. There's a lot more crowding on the streets, and the village maybe loses some of its villageness, and it becomes, if you can think of Bar Harbor in Maine. I'm not sure if you've been there. I spent a few years working up there, and those trails are gorgeous, and they've done a great job with that trail system. The town of Bar Harbor itself is overrun, and no one would want to live there because there are so many people there. And so I think for us, I want to know that the village can maintain its character and its historic value can be appreciated because there's space to breathe, that there's not signage slapped everywhere. And, you know, at the corner of 90 and Main, a big flashing light that says, don't go down the village street, you know, keep on heading north because the village is crowded today. And so I don't know what our purview is, you know, outside of signage and lighting, you know, how many garbage cans, et cetera. I'm not sure sort of where our
bathrooms was another thing I was thinking at Dockside.
bathrooms,
Those are
yeah.
and stalls that are.
But Dockside Park is not in our historic.
That's true, but this is kind of, but I think it's related and maybe worth us commenting on.
I completely agree.
Maybe we really have to really stick to it.
So for bathrooms, to your point, Dockside is planning on having some. I think that's great. I think a lot of visitors who get off at the train station or park are maybe first going to wander through the village and they'll need a bathroom somewhere else. And so it seems to me that there's additional infrastructure that's needed on village property in order to accommodate increased crowds. And this document says Cold Spring already has visitors. We're going to add visitors. We acknowledge that. I don't have the numbers quite right, but depending on what you're reading, it sounds like, you know, if Cold Spring is a popular place to start, it could be 200 a day or 200 people an hour on peak out. I mean, I don't want to get it wrong. That's an important number to get right, but there could be a lot of people here and they're going to need a bathroom on Upper Main. And so I feel like part of this design has to accommodate that without there being signage that then takes over the village, making it look like the village is just pointing you towards the hiking trails. I don't think we want the village to become like feel like the terminus or the origin of the Fjord Trail. So I don't know how to get ahead of it, but I see that coming. I mean, I think if we could ask that they make those moves subtly and not brand it, you know, not
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a bit unclear because, like I said when we started, like what are we commenting on? Are we commenting on exactly what is proposed and what is within our purview? Because there's very little that we can then comment on. Or are we here?
Why haven't they proposed those things? Sorry,
I disagree with what you said, Todd. I mean, basically, what is within our purview is in fact the origination of where the trail starts, because it starts at the train station.
Well, it doesn't, though. It doesn't, though.
It does, though. It does. Todd, if you are trying to tell us how you get to the beginning of the trail. You don't live in Lower Main, so you're coming into.
Well, why would you? I mean, there are so many options for that. Of course, if you're taking the train from the city, then yes, you're walking from the train station. If you're driving, then you're driving and maybe you're getting dropped off. Or if you live in the village, like us, we're walking. Or you may be parking up the hill up in Nelsonville and walking down.
All of those count. I think that's great. Yeah. Those are 4 different design elements that have to be worked through, and we need to understand and detail what those routes mean, because they've detailed that for the whole rest of the trail, and somehow they've stopped at Cold Spring and not detailed through what that looks like.
Yeah, I guess because they're not considering that part, you know, they're not adding parking elements to the southern terminus of the trail. So
but they're utilizing and advertising that they're utilizing the train station. So to say we have a parking lot at the train station, but not to design through how one gets from the train station to the origin of the trail, I think that's a design deficit. That's ignoring a problem that, as Al points out, is going to be a problem when you're in a wheelchair. And so I think it's vital that that's designed through, even if there's tension around it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And are we talking about providing parking at Dockside Park?
No.
All right. If that's the case, then you're coming by car and you want to start at Dockside Park. How do you get there?
That's a great question. I mean, I think we're a peninsula when we get to Lower Main, and that means you're driving over the train tracks. You're driving down to Dockside. You're temporarily letting your family out with all their bikes, and there's an informal parking lot that's just happened while people are unloading all of their stuff. And then you're driving to the train station to park your car. But I haven't seen the design. That's just me verbally guessing what that might look like.
Yeah, and the thing is that the only parking lot within reasonable range of that start at Dockside Park is the parking lot for the train station.
And
Which,
they've advertised that as the lot. Yeah.
yeah, so realistically, again, from there, it's not handicapped accessible to a point where you can get to Dockside Park or to Main Street and do your meandering around the other alignments. I have a concern about having this walkway built, essentially on the river. I mean, everywhere else along this thing, at least up in Dutchess County, the trail is all inland. Why is it that they're looking to have this walkway on the river?
I mean, that seems like I just don't see how we as a board have any right to submit comment about that. That to me completely falls outside of, if you want to submit a personal comment about how you feel about that, I think that's fine, but that's not in the village, number one, and it's certainly not in the historic district.
Well, it's in the village in that it originates at Dockside Park, which is
right. But the beginning of the trail is Dockside Park. So if you're commenting that technically the beginning of the trail is the train station parking lot, and then that is within the historic district, then I'm completely on board with submitting comments about that. But commenting on the rest of the trail, that I just don't, it's not clear what Kathleen is wanting us to do here. Like, are we just submitting comment on the trail because we are a board, or are we submitting comment on the trail on what's within our purview as the historic district review board?
Yeah. I understand your perspective, Todd, because there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions, and it's getting screwed up for years, right? And so where do we hold the line in order to just respond to things specifically in our purview? And I think there's larger conversations that we could have that could actually then inform our comments specific to the historic district. And so understanding where the park, this linear park, is going and why. And, for example, originally I understand it went down Fair Street. And then I understood that there is a concern that really would impact villagers and village life, and that there was a desire to get it off of Fair Street, to get it more out of the village. I'm sure there's a million other reasons, but some of that, I think, it's context that's helpful for us as we consider what impact it will have on the village. And so if, there's pros and cons to every trail, right? And I think it's real that one of the cons to having the trail end at Dockside is that it still needs to get out of the village after. People need to leave and go somewhere. And at Dockside, we're on a peninsula where there's one road to access Dockside, and there's one underground passage that gets flooded. And then there's one overground passage on the railroad, right? And that elevator sometimes is down. And so if we're being real about how the trail starts to impact the rest of the village, it's like I with Al too want to understand sort of what it means. And so if you think, well, why is it even here to begin with? I think it's a fair question. At some point, we need to just respond to,
I mean, just to be upfront, I have a problem with using Dockside as the terminus. I think that to have Cold Spring, the southern terminus of this trail, is problematic, because I think you get into accessibility issues. You get into as it is, on the weekends, the village is very crowded, and there's a lot of people, even during the winter months. So I think that all this will do is add to that. And I don't think that is of benefit to the village. I think that realistically, Stony Point is probably a better southern terminus, because there you have room in order to add parking where, you have people, and when you get up to, that train station on the other side of Breakneck Ridge, that could be the stop on the train, because I think that I don't know what advantage it is to the village to have the train station used as the southern terminus.
I think that the train station personally is going to be used as the southern terminus, regardless of whether it's actually called the southern terminus or not. So having a 100 car parking lot at Little Stony Point is not going to alleviate any of the problems with tourism that Cold Spring Village currently has, because you are still going to have a massive amount of traffic then coming off of the train. I mean, and I know I was commenting on the ADA accessibility portion, and you raise a very good comment. How is it really from the train station? It isn't accessible, but I think the reality is hundreds of people are getting off of the train at every single, hour or whatever increment on peak hours on the weekends and in the fall. And those people are, without dockside connecting to the main trail, are going to be coming all right through the village the way that they do now. So it will alleviate some pressure. I think that a lot of people will still be like, oh, well, I'm going to go for a walk on Main Street first and get breakfast or lunch. We all know what that looks like on the weekends, now. But it will alleviate some of the pressure within the core village, for people who are taking the train up and wanting to just go right to the trail and walk. I think that just calling Little Stony Point the beginning or the end, or the southern terminus is fair, you're gonna get none of the benefits of alleviating any of that pressure, and you're still gonna get the same amount of people who are gonna look at a map and be like, oh, it's a quarter mile. It will take 7 minutes for me to walk from the train station to Little Stony Point. Obviously, I'm just gonna take the train to Cold Spring anyways, like I was planning to do.
I agree with Todd, and I believe that's been studied.
Yeah.
So
And-
what if we framed our comments as, we recognize that with the exception of the potential meander at Fair Street, that none of the physical building as outlined in the DGIS is within our purview, because it's not within the district. However, we have some concerns and questions about things that are not included. And we would like more information on how people will circulate through the village from various points, including, I think, from 301, from south on 9D, from the train station, from north on 9D, in order to get both to Little Stony Point and Dockside, if that is to be the southern terminus. And we are concerned about how the village, what the character of the village will be when inevitably there will be necessary signage directing, like you said, Kate, directing them to it. And any ADA accessible features that need to happen. So maybe we just frame it more as we recognize this as such, but these are the things that are not in the report that we would like more information on.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it seems like signage is really the biggest thing, because we will need to be directing people where to go. So whether that's at the intersection with the traffic light or along Main Street also, or how far, like where and how many signs are you going to be placing? I think that's to me the biggest visual component. That is not clear at all.
So if we
and I would disagree with you, Lauren, in that you said that there is no part of it which is within our district. And that's not correct, because from the train station, you have to go through the district one way or another to get up to Little Stony Point.
I mean, I agree with you, but I think that's what we're asking for. because
Exactly.
we are recognizing that though what they've outlined in their report does not show anything built or does not show how people are moving through the village, we want to see that because that does affect our district.
Right.
It's like what's not included in the report is what we want to see.
Which
Agreed.
is basically that section, essentially.
And all the way up through Main Street too, because as you said, Kate, parking is going to be a problem. They're going to be removing parking spaces along Main Street at 9D on
I
either,
propose that.
Yeah.
I want to touch on that.
and then adding a lane. So it goes from a 4-lane intersection to a 6-lane intersection. That's something that will affect the village. I mean, if there is additional, I think we want some kind of study on, as also to your point, Kate, about if there are additional bathrooms needed in the village of Cold Spring, or if we need to expand our facilities. That's something that we also, that's in our purview.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So we do have some bathrooms at the
They're
the
insufficient already.
True.
Yeah.
And
So,
Yeah, I mean,
well,
they're not proposing adding anything elsewhere in the village. They're proposing adding bathrooms in Dockside Park only.
And that's where I think it's difficult, right? Different ownerships and different responsibilities. But if there's some acknowledgement, and I think there is in this document, that the village will have more tourists and more traffic, and those tourists and traffic are coming here because of the Fjord Trail, then it feels like they should supply bathroom facilities on Upper Main where these tourists will be going before they hit the trail, unless the village is supposed to pick up that burden. And I feel
Upper
like
Main is all private property though.
I'm not sure where it would go. I don't know if the current 2 bathrooms get redesigned and there's 4 stalls. I'm not sure, but I see a need that's resulting from the trail. And I feel like that should be designed through before things move forward. I also Lauren touched on the intersection of 90 and Main as one of the 3 intersections that have been defined as problematic if they move forward with the design, that there'll be a lot of congestion, right? And I think being in the village, if we picture what it is now and then picture that vital stoplight as overrun, I'm not going to be able to get out to go bring the kids to soccer practice because I'm going to be sitting in traffic for 10 hours. So what is the solution for that? And their solution is to blow out the parking and to add turning lanes, which I totally think will help traffic. But if you think about how that reads to the village, it means we go from having a buffer of parking between the houses and traffic to no buffer. And so those houses all of a sudden are more public and more urban and less village-like and less quaint. And there's implications for those homeowners, but also for how people experience the streetscape. And I would like that to be designed through and considered. And so then it makes me think, you know what, we can't have increased traffic. So if people are mostly coming from the south, I don't know, but if they are, and some of these nonprofits have offered to bus from their locations, Boscobel, potentially Shakespeare Festival, can we have those be the parking lots and have buses coming through, avoiding the village and going right to Little Stony Point, alleviating traffic and maintaining village life? And can that be actually considered and designed through? They've sort of sprinkled ideas about it, but can we actually solve that way and have a hard proposal to make that happen? Because that would help preserve the village as it is.
Yeah, the shuttle bus to other locations is an interesting idea. If Shakespeare was willing to, I mean, Boscobel doesn't have a huge amount of parking, especially on Saturdays with the farmers market, but
it was flagged though in the proposal that Boscobel could be a node for these buses.
Yeah. That would make the most sense because it's a mile away, right?
And it's south, right? So it avoids going through these intersections. It catches you before. Yep. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So if I'm writing a list for us in terms of our concerns and questions, I think we can begin our comments with the village is expected to have an increase in whatever the number is, visitors per year. outlining where they will be coming from and saying we want more information. But what are the things I'm asking for, or we would be asking for information from? So it would be, we want to see circulation maps.
Well, I think that the to me is unclear. They show these various alignments starting in various places. I think that needs to be clarified. For example, if there is no parking at dockside, how do people get there? Is it just people from the train walking up? If people come in cars, where do they park? Do they park in the train parking lot and then come up? There are a lot of empty or there are blank space. There are some holes in exactly how they envision people using or taking advantage of these different alignments, which to me are very unclear.
Well, the alignments are not what's being proposed, so we're not looking at the right page. Because,
Well, I think I just picked that one up so you
Yeah.
could see what the meander would look like.
right,
One of those shows the meander.
right. But the other colored lines, Al, are not being proposed in this document.
I understand that. It's the other alignments are alignments which they looked at and
Correct.
they are not recommending. They're recommending the one in the white. So how do you get to, if you can scroll down a little bit, where does that dash line go? Dash line goes to the train station.
Right.
So what they're proposing is that everybody who is going to start at Dockside Park will start at the train station. Is that not correct?
They say it. I have some of my notes. Crowding in the village. While crowding would still occur with the proposed action, the Fjord Trail would divert pedestrians arriving from Metro North Rail away from Main Street and toward the Fjord Trail entrance at Dockside Park, reducing pedestrian activity on Main Street, which I think is maybe not quite right, but that is their proposal. They're saying people will get off at Metro North and head to the Fjord Trail.
Okay, and evidently they don't consider Main Street below, west of the tracks as part of Main Street.
I mean, it's funny if you had a parking lot for a trail and a highway between the parking lot and the trail, surely the design would include getting you from the parking lot to the trail, going over or under the highway. So you have a village between the parking lot and the trail. Where is the design for that egress?
Yeah.
That and also, what's kind of interesting is they also have boat passengers which land at the dock and discharge people. So it's not just okay. The ways that people can get to Dockside train station, which they show the route, and it's not handicapped accessible. So what they would have to do is they'd have to probably provide a shuttle bus from the train station to Dockside. And realistically, where along that path do they provide bathroom facilities? The second way is that they have shuttle buses coming from other collection points such as Boscobel and the Shakespeare Festival. And I would assume that they're talking about busing those people through the village down to Dockside Park, right?
I would hope that that's not the case, that they would go to Little Stony Point, but we should get clarification. I should say I added Shakespeare Festival. I did not read that. I read Boscobel as an option.
Oh. Shakespeare would make a lot more sense because it's got a lot more parking, but
And they're doing a lot of work there now. You know, not only do they have this new facility, but they're doing a lot of landscaping. And my understanding is they'll open up a lot of the current golf course as a public park. So
Yeah.
it could be advantageous to combine the two.
I like that idea if they're willing to
Yeah.
do
Yeah,
that.
I can't speak. I'm not speaking for anyone over there, but just
Well,
to,
we can say that that Kate says that Shakespeare Festival promised.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so and then so we have those. We have people who are arriving by car, and I would assume if the Dockside Park is the southern terminus, they would park in the Metro North parking lot and then walk up. And then you have the people who arrive by boat, the river cruise boats, and they disembark at the pier. And that would be a relatively simple and straightforward
Mhm.
access onto the trail. So, those are the I just I am very concerned about and we have a very crowded condition as it is now, and no matter which way people come, it's going to increase the traffic that will occur. The only hope is that people will, if they come by car or shuttle bus, that that car or shuttle bus will come to Stony Point as opposed to Dockside.
I mean, and that makes me think, is it possible, and this would be at, the mayor, the board's level, not at our level, but is it possible to say no cars to this southern terminus, only boats and train traffic, only pedestrians coming by train and boats? And like, if, we'll intentionally not make it possible for people to bring their cars to Lower Main. And I don't know how this is not a private community. You don't have like a gate that you can do that with, but if there's some way that that's possible, they said, I think there's 400 spots in the Metro North lot. On weekends, it's free. 200 are normally free and available. Do those 200 get swallowed? And then someone in Nelsonville who wants to bring their kids into the city can't park because it's overwrought with tourists. Like, where's the balance? How much do we offer
like,
in advance?
How do you police that?
In a welcoming way that sort of accommodates visitors and
I used to think with
right?
Breakneck, I was like, why don't they just eliminate all parking at Breakneck? And then all of a sudden you don't have like just make it so you cannot stop there in a vehicle. And then you don't have all of the vehicle traffic there. People just have to keep moving. But I don't know how you could police that without an actual police force checking what ID or asking where you're going. And then that in itself creates a potential traffic nightmare.
I mean, one thought, sorry.
No, I just had one thought. There was another thing that they mentioned in the report, and it was when they were talking about the license agreement between the state and the village, and how the highway department is going to continue to maintain Dockside. And they said that the village could make the village could make money by renting out Dockside for, and I even said events and weddings. So if that was another thing, then that's a whole other issue of parking.
Really good.
Where did you read that? Do you remember where you read that?
I don't. Yep, it's in there towards the end, maybe.
Oh.
Hang on.
If you type highway, I don't know if that would.
Maybe, is it C? Oh no, 4K5. I don't know what page it's on though. And try to find it. So it's in the like 600s.
Okay, 4K5. I'll look that up.
4K5. And it says the Village of Cold Spring can generate revenue through the license at Dockside Park by renting out Dockside for events and weddings.
It's so funny. Even Dockside now, they've recently put up signage, which it's important to have historic context. So I think it's, about the various mountains and history of the space. But now you look at this beautiful view and there's this sign smack in front of you. And it just feels like sometimes less is more. Like if that could have been at the entry to the park, then you could have this vast view without a, contemporary sign in your way.
Or
But
something.
what's that, Lauren?
Or lower to the ground,
Or lower, or not through an app, because that seems biased towards certain age groups. But I just, and this is kind of embarrassing, but I needed to go into the city on Monday, and I drove in at night, one of the first days where they have congestion pricing. And I wasn't there to make a return at Macy's, but I had a return at Macy's, and I thought, okay, I'll just quickly stop and find a parking spot somehow and make this return. And it was like the biggest tourist move. I mean, it's like I've never lived in New York. Every single spot was commercial vehicle only, every single one. So there was no way for me to stop. And if I had stopped, I would have gotten a ticket. So I left. And so maybe that's something that we can do where it's, villager parking spots only and no other spot, or you get a ticket. It would have to be provisions like that to keep people from even attempting, unless they're, the first time they learn, and then you don't try to go back to Macy's by car in the middle of New York City, right? But there's got to be something. Otherwise, it's a peninsula with already not enough parking, and it's going to just be a traffic jam, and it will completely deteriorate the quality of village life for Lower Main if that's not solved. Upper Main is a different issue.
Yeah, I think it's it's an especially tricky position because at the end of the day, the village, number one, the village does not have a say in what happens or doesn't. Number two,
Sorry, in general or specific?
In general, it's not like this is like up for a vote and this is what this process is about, and the state will take into consideration all of the public comment from individuals, from municipalities, all of that, but the village doesn't have a say as to whether they can just yes or no dockside. So, and nor do they have a say whether they can yes or no Little Stony Point or any other portion of this trail. So I think like it becomes like what, again, like as I said earlier, what are we commenting on? And I certainly would never advocate or propose like free reign for Fjord Trail to do whatever they want. And I think we all need to submit comments. But if the assumption is that it happens in some capacity, most likely it will happen at least from Stony Point northward, then you end up with, well, if it doesn't, in some capacity connect directly to the village, what are we then left with dealing with? Because we've already established there is no safe way to get to Little Stony Point now on Fair Street. And yet hundreds of people every single weekend, any nice weather day, are walking in the middle of the road. I mean, I've almost been hit a number of times running on Fair Street, and I am like very cautious to go against traffic on the shoulder. And most of these idiots from the city that come up on the train are walking in the middle of the road. So it's like,
you want to edit that for the
no, I don't.
I feel like they're in a great
literally
village.
was almost
They
hit
don't
by
realize that it's also busy.
Yeah, and so it's like I don't want to boil it down because nothing is as black and white, like nothing is ever simple. There's nuance to all of this, but I don't want to boil it down to like what happens if we do nothing. But I do think there is a lot of validity to like what happens if we do nothing and we just nix and we are able to nix this whole thing about connecting to the village, and it starts at Stony Point. Okay, well, now you've got all of these people that are still coming via the train and still looking at a map and being like, oh, well, I could park over by the train station, and then there's no signage and there's no bathroom at dockside, or all these other pieces that start to kind of like crumble around like the southern terminus being a third of a mile, whatever it is, north of the village. So yeah, go ahead, Kate.
I'd like to give the Fjord Trail design team the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And say that if they want it to start here, let's try to make it happen. Like there's probably good reason, but I do think that there's design work that has to be done to solve for the issues that have been identified. And I think there are solutions, and sometimes they have to be creative solutions and uncomfortable solutions, but it's not necessarily just make a roundabout and add a bunch of lanes and add a bunch of signage and here's your bathroom and let's go. You know, good luck, person in your wheelchair, because we haven't designed through the train station to the dockside park. I think the design, the issues have to be solved now. And so it's, are we going to bus from Boscobel? Are we going to say, you know, resident parking only? And, you know, we're going to have someone ticketing constantly and keeping people moving so they don't, you know, but it's not solved yet. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it could be great, but there's issues that have to get solved. Otherwise, village life will deteriorate and the quality of the village will deteriorate. And so we need them to understand the issues and design through the issues and solutions so that we feel confident that this can work, that these two, you know, very different scaled existences can coexist. You know, a tourist fjord trail and a quiet village, right? That's still unable to accommodate tourists as it is. And like, how do we merge those two for it to work? And I just think that that hasn't been studied in full, in part out of fear. It's much easier to design through the upper portions where there is less tension. And, you know, these guys know best about the rattlesnakes and the peregrine falcons and the riprap.
Well, also Beacon's like waterfront is just massive by comparison. So it's
Beacon
much
is set up perfectly for it. The train station is out of the village. The train station connects to a park. You know, the trail is not like, there are no...
The village of 14,000 people versus 2,000 too.
There are no, well, I'm sure there's some, but it feels like there are no design hurdles. It's just set up to work up there, and it is not set up to work here. So like, we're looking at a portion of the map that is not solved yet. And so like, they have the best team, you know, they have Scape, they have Arup, they have all these researchers. I just think that, I don't know what it is, but maybe whatever it is, this is the spot that has to get solved. And I think we have to think creatively about how to do that so that I don't feel like I have to walk down Main Street wearing like old Dutch clogs because we're now in like historic Cold Spring. And, you know, it's.
Hey, that's an idea.
Could we begin our comments by saying that the HDRB appreciates the detail with which the northern section and some of the southern section that goes through the protected lands has been thought through, but we have a lot of concerns and questions about, like I said before, the things that are not included, and we would like to see some images or understand the design more. But then I think we need to provide them with a kind of like list of the things that we want. And we can't say things like parking because that's the planning board, but maybe we can say with the increased visitation to the village, we're concerned about the signage that will direct the tourism, and we don't want to overwhelm. We don't want to detract from the historic character of the village. So one of our main concerns is signage and how people are directed.
Location, quantity,
location, quantity,
you know, billboards with like a highway sign directing like, oh, this way or that way. Is that gonna
our board regulates and we don't regulate what it says, but we regulate the size and the font and the placement. So I think that's something we can kind of go to. I think we can say something like, we do have questions about as Al said, what the accessibility is going to be like from the train station.
Because that would have a visual impact if they have to do construction on existing sidewalks. Like, yes, that's very.
I see some streetscape renderings at the very least, or at least a plan. As you said, Kate, the streetscapes at the corner of 90 and Main. Mm-hmm. We are concerned that maybe we could say something like, because the facilities at Lower Main that already exist are already overwhelmed, we are concerned that won't be enough, even with the addition of bathrooms at Dockside. And if that does require an upgrade or an expansion of those facilities, like that's something that we are concerned about, and we'd like the Fjord Trail to think about that first, please.
What?
And
can-
any shuttle bus signing and stuff as well.
I think that's a good list, Lauren.
All right, the reason that they're using Dockside is because that's state park, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so is Stony Point, is
Yeah.
also state park.
Mm-hmm.
Just out of a side note, Dockside was offered to the village.
Yeah,
Right.
biggest mistake they ever made.
But I think that that's the only reason why they are extending it down. But I do believe that we can talk about parking and means of transportation, because that will have an impact on the village and how the village accommodates the increased pedestrian traffic, increased automotive traffic,
And
shuttle buses.
bicycles too. This
Yeah.
is one
I
of the reasons it's
but
going to
that's
Dockside.
not an HDRB issue. That's a
Well,
plan.
Well, it's primarily a planning planning committee issue, but if it if the solutions to their to accommodating this movement does in fact impact the historic fabric, and I think that certainly when you start talking about automotive traffic, I mean,
Mm.
on the weekends, that Main Street is a real problem, and that's the only way to get there by car. You come down Main Street, you go over the bridge, and then continue on Main Street. So there is a choke point there, and if we're going to be attracting more people who then want to park at the train station parking lot, it's going to create problems. And so what is the impact of that on the historic district, on the all of the assets that are along Main Street and along the routes that cars have to take?
Well, maybe we could say something in our comments that says, and while we recognize that this is not specifically within our purview, we are concerned that the overflow of traffic and potential additional parking would affect or deter from the historic character of the village. And we recommend rerouting some of the shuttle bus routes from Boscobel to Little Stony Point, and try to figure out other ways to alleviate automobile congestion, because this is, by its character and historic character, and by what brings people to the village, a walkable village.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think there'll be a lot of privacy fences that are getting requested if it's not solved.
Good
I think
point.
we should also include bicycles. One of the intentions is to have a complete sort of linear path for bikes to continue as far north and south as they can over time, right? There's all these smaller paths getting stitched together. And so there will definitely be bicycles on this trail, and considering how people will move through the village with those bikes, where they'll park them. Do we need bike stands everywhere now? Are there accommodations at the railroad? Are the sidewalks wide enough to accommodate someone with a bike? Are they walking the bike? Is there a pedestrian next to them? Do those people end up on the road? What does that mean? Again, I know some of it's not in our purview, but it overall will definitely have an impact on the quality of the village.
Okay. It sounds like Lauren has a draft of our comments.
Good job,
And
Lauren.
So if you could,
Oh.
if you can prepare a draft, and then I suggest that we do have another meeting to go over this stuff.
Could I make it as a Google Doc, and then everybody can comment on their own free time?
That
Yes,
would be
we can.
awesome.
And then if we can all edit it and you can see who edits it and things.
Yep. So when in January do we want to meet again?
This time next week?
Oh, wait, no, let me see.
We have a meeting scheduled. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a meeting scheduled on
May 1st.
the 21st, right? Do we want to, yeah, okay, let's do that. Now, the other thing which and I think Kate, you may want to take the lead on this. I do want to start organizing the material that we have that we're going to transfer over to the Butler Library. I think I sent to everybody a copy of the format that Lauren developed, as well as the Larson Fisher survey. And so do any of those categories in the Larson Fisher survey, do we want to add them to the format, and we can start assembling those documents? I got a response from Johanna that she doesn't anticipate. I was estimating that at least for the first brush our first attempt at developing a database, we're talking about like 2 to 3 gigabytes of storage that we would need. Because we do have, there is a lot more than what just the information that we have concerning the properties. But I think that is what we should be focusing on, because I think that's something which we can, will be of help to us in reviewing the properties, is to have a database which has photographs and information, character defining features of the properties. So I think, Kate, if you can take a look at that and see if there is any change to the format. And I guess what we need to do is set up somehow where we can link in the photographs that we have, because in addition to the photographs, we also have postcards which show the properties in earlier stages of their existence in the village. So if you can take a look at that, and then what we can do is discuss it at the meeting on the 21st.
Yeah, I can look, and whoever else maybe has comments at Lauren's template and the spreadsheet, Al, that we have from the prior researcher. To confirm a final template, and then I think it will be important maybe at the next meeting to determine the man hours required to populate the documents, and in what order we're going to populate it, and what role the village has in archiving some content versus what the library will hold. And if maybe we need a grant for a student to help with some of that data entry. I think it's a great idea, and I know we were excited about it, and we've sort of done this for a reason, because there's a dearth of information on properties when we need it, although it exists, it's just inaccessible. So then to me, it's just a question of how we roll this out. But I think it's a great first step to confirm the template.
Yeah. And what I was suggesting is that we have a Google file where we can work on the data, and then when we feel it's ready to be shifted over to the library, we can go ahead and transfer it over to them, and they become the repository. So until we, so what we need to do is maybe start with a few properties, and let's say 5 properties, because all totaled based on the Larson Fisher survey, I counted about 504 properties that we'll have to develop a file for. So
Mhm. I like the idea to start with 5. One thing I would ask too, and Al, I don't know if this is you or if Abby can help with this, but if we can get confirmation on exactly what the Village of Cold Spring maintains as far as our records go, it would be really helpful to know what's in the village's purview and what they're holding so that we understand sort of what we're doing to be additional and to be housed in the right location. I just don't want to conflate the roles of the library and the village or repeat work. I want to be intentional.
yeah, I don't, and Abby, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that the village maintains anything more than just a record of the certificate of appropriateness in the minutes of the meetings. Am I correct, Abby?
And the application, right? Not just the approval.
Well, and what kind of, how long do they hang on to that? Abby?
Typically, I mean, from what I've seen so far, there are just record of applications, as you mentioned, the minutes, and any other supplementary material, usually photos. In the Laserfiche, I'm not really seeing, well, consistency in the record, but if there is historical, like let's say HDRB applications from 20 years ago, usually it has to do with a bigger project, like some kind of renovation or windows. Other than that, there's not much, but I can show you what I have and as an example to really explain. Go ahead.
Well, I think that at this particular point, what is important that we start the property by property database. And then what we can do is we can take a look, because I know from previous experience that it used to be all paper,
Mhm.
and the application and certificate of appropriateness was all done in paper until we had COVID, and then it became all digital.
Mhm.
So I think that the paper documents, they were archived up to a certain point, but I don't think that they archived everything that we had. And I know that the paper applications and um, uh, files were also sent to Putnam County for their storage. The one other thing, Lauren, that we should talk about, I looked at the historic correspondence, or the correspondence with SHPO, and it seemed like they spent a lot of time going over stuff in the Dutchess County, because they talked about Madame Brett and Dennings Point and so on, which are all in Dutchess County. And it doesn't look like there was anything that was really discussed or reviewed south of the Breakneck Ridge.
They talked about the it's not a pump house, but the that stone building.
By
And
breakneck.
the what?
By breakneck, right?
Yeah, I forget the function of that, but it was connected to the Catskill water system, the New York City water system. And they did note that it was it's National Register eligible, but they have no plans for it at all. And that was actually a question. I wonder, is that in Fishkill or is that in Cold Spring?
I think that might be
Fishkill.
Fishkill.
I was going to say, if it's in Cold Spring, we could maybe encourage it to be listed on the National Register. And then the other property they talked about was 115 or 117 Fair Street.
Yeah, at the last house.
Yeah, 117 Fair Street, the yellow house.
Mhm.
And that's where the sidewalk is going to go in front of that house. and they will also have the, in terms of a view shed, that's where the elevated walkway is going to be, like in front of their house. Along
There's a few houses there that impact, I don't know, Al, where you're going with this, but it makes me think we missed a whole conversation.
about
Is
view.
that-
You said, and historic buildings, because their argument is that their trail is more than 100, 200 feet away from any historic property, but that ignores the meander and ignores sort of generally
The
what's
117 Fair Street, is that the yellow house that is next to the church?
no, it's at the
It's further, is
All the
further
way down by Little Stony Point, there's 3 houses there at the end of Fair Street where it meets 9D.
And I don't think it's in the district,
it's
right?
not-
it's-
Yeah. So, but if the but the meander does go down Fair Street.
So I think they have to add the meander, acknowledge it as part of the proposal and sort of hedging, because as soon as they acknowledge it as part of the proposal, then all of a sudden it changes the conversation about what's being considered.
Yeah, but they are very careful to call it a potential.
Well, but that seems unfair. It's like, isn't
Well,
this the
so
proposal where they need to own it or not? I don't know.
Well, I think realistically, what we have to say is that no matter what, if there are a bunch of visitors on Main Street, that the chances are they will go down Fair Street to Stony Point to get on this this main trail. So I think it's something which maybe they're not planning on, but I think that realistically, if you're a visitor and you're aware of the Fjord Trail, would you not, walk over and see what it's like? I mean, I think that we have to say that we anticipate more pedestrian traffic in the district. And I don't know what we can say at this particular point
Well,
as far as its impact.
well, I think that's sort of what we're asking for clarification on when we ask for a circulation map and what they imagine and what they imagine the signage will be, because and we can definitely highlight the Fair Street meander as something that we will have to approve any kind of signage that or any other changes that happen on that road if it comes to that. So we'd like them to kind of really kind of say yay or nay. Well, I mean, it's going to affect us anyway, but if they are advertising it as a meander, that directly affects the historic district for signage, etc.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, okay. Any last thoughts? I mean, along Fair Street, we do have who's the woman who's married to the engineer on the Brooklyn Bridge?
Roebling.
Talking about Kathy's
Yeah.
house. Yeah. At
Right.
State
Her-
Fair, maybe
The
60.
house that she grew up in is on Fair Street.
I'm
Yeah.
looking at oh, yeah.
Okay. I think that we can all take another look, and then on the 21st, we can sort of clean up what we have and send it on to the mayor. And then we can all start working on our individual comments.
So when I will try to get a Google Doc draft to you guys, maybe by the end of the week, probably early next week, if I'm being realistic. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's fine.
Cool.
All right. And I think that as far as minutes go, Abby, this could be just we discussed these 2 topics and call it a day.
Yeah.
And we will submit a report.
Well, we need to have minutes for all public meetings. which is another thing that we need to work on, that and need to get John first to set up this training that we have for our legal aspect of it. Okay. All right. Thank you for taking the time, and we will see each other on the 21st.
Cool.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
All
Stay
right.
warm.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye.